Here.
Mr. Valentine,
Here.
Mrs. Messick,
Here.
and Mrs. Rigby.
Here. Dr. Marshausen.
Before we continue the meeting, I'd like to take a moment to honor and remember Tom Ireland. Tom was a longtime member of our community who served on our Business Advisory Council for many years and has been the Tolles Board's representative for our Board of Education. Tom passed away last evening after a 2-year battle with brain cancer. He leaves behind his beautiful wife, Tanya, and their 2 daughters, Bailey and Maddie. I'd like to have a brief moment of silence in memory of Mr. Ireland. Thank you, Mrs. Rigby.
At this time, for the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like to welcome Mr. Troy Ersham and the Blazer Pride students.
Good evening, Dr. Marshausen, Mr. Kern, members of the Board of Education. My name is Troy Ersham. I'm principal at Abraham Depp Elementary School, and I'm proud to share some leadership. We are the Trailblazers, as our nickname, but these are students that blaze trails of leadership around our school. They're all 5th grade students. They serve on our Blazer Pride team. It's basically like a principal advisory team that I help navigate some of the things around school from the student voice. So they help with the yearbook themes. They help with Spirit Week themes. They help with just general operations around the school from the student voice. I'm helping share some things about what takes place on recess that we can help provide action steps and safety around fun and creative play around our school. So at this time, Mr. Stellers is our assistant principal, and I'm going to have him pass the mic down and have the students introduce them tonight.
Hello, my name is Joey Pickle.
Hello, my name is Andrew Donlin.
Hi, my name is Peyton Mayu.
My name is Riley Marquardt.
Hi, my name is Annie Duncan.
Hello, my name is JT Chikati.
Hello, my name is Colton Watson.
Wait a second. 1 second. Stand. Please stand up and face the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, Colton, want to join us this way? We're going to get a picture over here with Mr. or Dr. Marshausen.
Moving on to the approval of the regular minutes for tonight, it's recommended that the board approve the January 13th, 2025 regular meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Gillis. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
and Mrs. Rigby.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. It's recommended by the board that we approve the January 27th, 2025 regular work session meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Messick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Messick,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Valentine,
Abstain.
and Mrs. Rigby.
Yes. Motion passes 4-0 with one vote to abstain. And the approval of the agenda for this evening, it is recommended that the board approve the agenda as presented for tonight's meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Valentine. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Gillis. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis,
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva,
Yes.
Mrs. Messick,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rigby.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. And now on to awards and recognitions. Dr. Schwanke.
Good evening, everyone. The Golden Shamrock Award was started in 1990, before I think both of our winners were born. It was founded by Ed Pugnacki, an active community member in Dublin, as well as a business owner. This award was created to recognize outstanding staff members in our district who have made deep contributions and have had a significant impact through the work they do each day. Tonight we have 2 award winners, and at this time I'd like to ask Mr. Page to come to the podium to say a few words about our first winner, Lindsay Bartos. Lindsay, you come too.
Good evening, Dr. Marshhouse, Board of Education. Thanks for having us here this evening. It's an honor to celebrate Mrs. Bartos today. She has a lot of students out in the crowd, if that gives an impact on her impact on our kids. She's not just a teacher. She's a ray of sunshine in the lives of her students and their families. In fact, she calls them her sunshines if you've ever been in her classroom. Every day she enters the classroom with a smile, creating an inviting atmosphere where children feel safe and valued. Her passion for teaching and her unwavering commitment to each student is evident in everything that she does. As one parent beautifully stated, Mrs. Bartos treats her students as if they were her own. I have been lucky to trust her with both of my children. As a parent, there's really no higher compliment than that. Her ability to connect with each child individually is remarkable. She takes the time to understand their unique needs and learning styles, ensuring that everyone feels supported and encouraged. Mrs. Bartos works tirelessly for each student that walks through her doors, often to the tune of a song that she's made up in her classroom. The impact she has on her students goes beyond academics. She fosters a love of learning that lasts a lifetime, instilling confidence and independence in her students. Many former students continue to visit her classroom long after they've left first grade. One former student even described her as a teacher who makes her want to learn. Mrs. Bartos takes the time to communicate with parents, keeping them informed and involved in their child's education. Her thoughtful newsletters and updates make families feel like partners in the learning process, strengthening the homeschool connection. Her dedication extends beyond the classroom as well. She actively participates in various district and building committees, promoting a positive school culture and supporting her colleagues personally and professionally. She embodies our Dublin City Schools values of always growing and better together. Her infectious enthusiasm uplifts everyone around her, making her an invaluable asset to our school learning community. Lindsay's commitment to excellence, her compassion, and her genuine love for teaching make her a deserving recipient of this award. Mrs. Bartos, thank you for being an extraordinary educator and person.
You'll have to forgive me because I'm used to standing in front of 6- and 7-year-olds singing, dancing, learning, and teaching every day. It's just a little different up here in front of all of our wonderful board members, administration, staff, colleagues, students, families, members of the community, and of course my family. I'm so grateful and overwhelmed at the same time that people thought of me for this prestigious award. For anyone that knows me, the most important thing in my life is to spread some sunshine to those around me. Building relationships and truly appreciating every soul that I come in contact with is something that I've learned from my amazing parents. I am so thankful for their support, along with the support from my husband, teammates, colleagues, the administration, and all the Dublin staff I've worked with. I am so honored to be a part of Dublin City Schools, especially Eli Penny, where I've spent over 2 decades teaching the most beautiful minds and connecting with the most amazing people and families. I truly look at this award as representing the collective of efforts of so many individuals that have impacted this journey. My deepest amount of appreciation to all the students, teachers, mentors, coaches, administrations, families, and community members that have shaped my career and that have inspired me. Your unwavering support has been the foundation upon which I have built my dreams. My most passionate thing about teaching is connecting with each student and developing an individual path for their education, goals, and interests. I just love fostering a spirit to be a lifelong learner filled with that curiosity and the desire to make a difference, even if it's just the smallest one. This is such an incredible and humbling moment that I will always remember and be thankful for. I'm so delighted for the opportunity to work with kids. It truly brings the utmost joy to my soul learning with them, watching them grow, and building lifelong relationships. My heart will always be full of love and sunshine for Dublin City Schools and the fantastic people that I've been surrounded with. I am excited to continue my journey and pay forward the kindness and sunshine that I acquire every day through this remarkable job. And I guess I'm just going to leave you with just always spread sunshine in everything you do, and everybody counts. Thank you.
Okay, and for our next award, I'd like to invite Mr. Mike Aron to the podium to present the next award to Andrea Balin. Andrea, come on up too.
Good evening, Dr. Marchhausen, Mr. Kern, Board of Education, colleagues, family, and community members. I knew this was an important speech because I've been scratching and moving stuff around, and this is kind of how my graduation speech looks, because I want to make sure that I'm doing Andrea right by sharing how important she is to Jerome. Before I kind of get into that, I want to thank Andrea's family and fiance for being here this evening, taking the time to support her. There's no doubt that the support you've given her over the years has made her who she is today, and I am appreciative for that. Mr. Balin, I also want to thank you for your service. Appreciate you. Okay. Just really quickly about Andrea, she's a remarkable educator, coach, mentor, leader, whose impact on Jerome has been immeasurable in the short amount of time she's been with us. She's a product of Dublin City Schools. She serves as a school counselor and a coach. She has an unwavering dedication to students both in the classroom and on the court, and it's made her instantly a leader in the Jerome community. She's deeply invested in individuals, and her ability to connect and support with students has made such a significant impact on the school community as a whole. Beyond her role as a school counselor, Andrea has chosen to impact others as a coach. She views sports as a powerful platform for developing character, resilience, leadership in young women. She fosters an environment where her athletes feel heard, empowered, and supported. And I can tell you through every nomination, those words kind of kept coming up over and over again. Her ability to balance high expectations with genuine care has earned her the respect and admiration of her players, their families, and her colleagues. While being a counselor and coach this past year, Andrea also managed to complete her PhD. This extraordinary achievement speaks to her resilience, her work ethic, and passion for education. Again, another opportunity for her to be a role model for her athletes and our students. Andrea is more than just a coach and a counselor. She's a mentor, she's a role model, she's an advocate for young people. Her ability to inspire confidence, foster community, and lead with integrity makes her truly exceptional. She embodies everything that we would expect here at Dublin City Schools and of the Golden Shamrock, and it's with great pride that we recognize her this evening. Thank you, Andrea.
did not type a speech, but this is my reminders of who to thank. So I do want to thank the committee for honoring me with this prestigious award. I want to thank my bosses, Mike Aron and Jay Schwanke. Their mentorship, their leadership means the world to me. I'm knocking on their door at least once a week, so asking them questions, picking their brains about their careers in coaching and in leadership, and their support has been unbelievable to me. I also want to shout out Joe Bline. He took a chance on me 4 years ago as hiring me as a first-time head coach at Dublin Jerome, and that decision completely changed my life, so I do want to shout out Joe. To the athletes, families, and colleagues that I get to serve every day, truly thank you for your trust in me and my vision for not just coaching, but also what I'm doing within the walls of Dublin Jerome while I'm counseling different families and different students. I feel really fortunate to, like Mike said, not only be a product of Dublin City Schools, but to now work here. This is the greatest joy and pride of my life. So, and then thank you to my family and my fiance, Manny. I think my parents did not think they were going to spend a whole lot of time in high school gyms once I was done at Dublin Kaufman, and yet they continue to show up to most of my games that I'm coaching. So your support has been incredible over the years, and my fiance just joined the party 3 years ago, so he's also a huge fan of high school sports now. So sports can change people's lives, and I'm just really thankful for the opportunity to be able to impact young women the way that I do. So thank you all so much. I know you did. I believe City Schools as well.
All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Okay, moving on to presentations. We will now have a presentation from Mr. Scott Melody about Toll's Career and Technical Center.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Dr. Marshausen, Mr. Kern, members of the board. Thank you for having me here this evening for a Toll's Career Tech Update. First of all, on the report is the enrollment for 24-25. Open enrollment, priority enrollment closed at the end of Martin Luther King Day weekend, and right now we have 1,033 students registered for programs, expressed interest in Tolls. That is up by 150 students from last year at the same time. So we are excited about that, the continued growth and expansion in the programs at Tolls. Just a reminder for the board, any program that is over enrollment for the Tolls programs, federal law dictates that we have a lottery for the students to see what programs they can get in. They will be selected for first choice and second choice. They have 2 choices that they can apply for. And then just depending on how the enrollment process pans out between now and the end of the summer, we will fill all open spots, hopefully, and get everyone in the programs they want. So as you can see on the report, Dublin's students enrolled or expressed interest. We have 97 for Kaufman, 34 from Jerome, and 93 from Scioto. So that may change over the next several months, but that is great to see that Dublin students are taking advantages of the programs we have. Next, there is a section in here about the Career Exploration Academy. This is for sophomore students. It's what it sounds like. They get a broad range of exposure to all the programs at Tolls so they can determine what they want in the future. And coupled with that, it's a half-day program at Tolls, and they also get their sophomore English learning credits. So it's a great combination of career tech exploration as well as English. Next, we have the facility expansion that continues to progress. A little bit slower pace than you're probably accustomed to hear at Dublin, but it's moving along. We want to make sure that we've got all the classrooms, all the design layouts and everything is a fit for all the students and the teachers and what they want for their programs. So we are probably going to approve that design either at the February or March board meetings, and then we will break ground in June and get moving on that. Right now, it's not scheduled to open until after school starts in 26, probably November 26, but we are going to work to try to move up that timeline as we can. And then a few dates of importance. March 7th, there's a Career Tech fair, career fair at Tolles with approximately 100 businesses there participating. And then on Wednesday, March 23rd, will be the annual board recognition, school board recognition dinner hosted by the Tolles Academy. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask or email me anytime. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Continuing on with presentations, we will have an update on our Journey 2030.
Okay, just as a reminder to the Board of Education about Journey 2030, this is just, it captures the goals from all of the departments led by the folks sitting here. So we are going to, we're going to move quickly through this and allow for questions at the end. What you will see on the Journey 2030 slides, you'll see a quick overview of the 4 areas of goal development. There we go. Academic foundation, partnerships and networks, student experience, and master facility planning. You'll notice we're going to be jumping back and forth between people sharing, and that's because this truly is a collaborative effort. We can't talk about facility planning without talking about partnerships and student experience and academic foundations, for example. So they're all intertwined pretty deeply. What we'll start with is the first slide will be a summary of the current goal. And so just as a reminder, this was approved by the Board of Education in the summer, and we're just giving you a mid-year update. So the first slide will be the goal, and then we will have a second slide that where each person will kind of summarize what we're currently working on. So I'm going to toss it over to Mrs. Marple to talk about academic foundation current work.
Thank you, Dr. Schwanke. So you can see here on this slide is our 2030 goal, the one that has kind of been our guiding light as we've made our building goals. What I'd like to do is flip to the second slide and share an update on the current work in progress mid-year this year. Under the title of early literacy, there has been a lot of good work happening in our schools and at the district level. That first one is that our DIBELS 8 measures were implemented in their entirety this year, both in the fall and then again in January as our mid-year dyslexia screener. You might recall that last year only some of the measures were given in the fall, and by giving that full DIBELS 8 measure each fall, we really are able to use that data to drive instruction for our students and also give our youngest learners a chance to do those measures in the fall once and then again getting a mid-year snapshot. Also, in partnership with Mr. Allring and Mrs. Althouse, our building goal alignment, we really worked on that this year. Over the summer, our principals looked at subgroup data, and then they thought about their building needs individually as far as literacy goes and created goals to progress monitor. And so our building principals and their teams have been working towards those goals all year in combination with district staff. And then in November, we offered a PD regarding our English learners, really thinking about strategies that work for all students, but are really essential for our English learning in the district. As well, in the area of intervention and instructional goal alignment, our literacy support team at elementary and with the addition of our English Connections class, or Literacy Connections class, I should say, at middle school, our teams have been working on thinking about student data and writing appropriate goals and then matching the intervention work to those goals. And that's been a lot of PD, regular meetings, and data reflection for those teams. And then finally, our literacy support team, last year, as you might recall, we implemented PLL, which was one of our intervention tools, closely aligned to 95 Phonics. And our team at elementary spent quite a bit of time learning that tool and adding it kind of to what we call the toolbox that they use with students. And this year, under the leadership of Brittany Deschler, that team has really been thinking about student data in a more personalized way and really working to make sure they're matching the proper tool to that student's reading goal. And so those literacy goals are reflected upon 3 times a year at the building level and at the district level in a collaborative effort to really make sure that we're getting the right interventions and the right supports to our readers. Moving over to the pathway goal. You can see a lot has been happening in our 612 pathways. I'll start with just this idea of continued teacher professional learning. One of the things we've been very intentional this year is through our curriculum review, making sure we include pathways into that work with our teacher teams, making sure, so for example, this year with science, Jen Hinderer has partnered with Christina Hutchison as they've met with teachers to make sure that as we're making curricular decisions, we're really thinking about all the opportunities and pathways that come together. So we've made sure that we've pulled academy work into that and high school work, really trying to bridge the opportunities in students' home buildings with the opportunities that they have here at Emerald Campus. And as you know, we are midway through some middle school curriculum redesign. We've made some decisions, as you saw at previous board meetings, around the middle school experience at 6th grade. But tonight I really want to highlight the work that's happening in the implementation of that 7th grade Prepared for Success class. Every 7th grader in Dublin City Schools this year is taking that Prepared for Success elective. And in that class, the students take the U-Science aptitude assessment and are getting experiences and exposure to different career pathways. And it's there's a lot of student voice in that class as well as teacher training, and those teachers have had regular, optional, and some scheduled required PD as they've continued to add to that course over time. We are very excited about that piece, and it also leads me into the third bullet there. We are in the process of writing CTEs for our middle school and some of our high school opportunities, as well as articulating pre-apprenticeships in some areas at high school, and we'll talk more about that work as it comes together here, but that's in the draft stage right now, as well as a desire to expand internships. You may know that we have a co-op program here at Emerald Campus this year, and it didn't quite get off the ground in the way that we want, and our goal is to really push that out into the high schools to make sure that whether or not students have the time and ability to travel to Emerald Campus wouldn't get in the way of whether or not they could take advantage of an internship opportunity. So we are also working hard to make sure that the access is there for all students, both here at Emerald Campus through something like our YPA program and in the buildings through something like the co-op. And then finally, we've talked a lot about planning and aptitude and interest. And School Links and U-Science are our platforms for those things. And we started that work last year, as you might recall, in our middle schools. And right now, Kevin Patton is working with our high schools on finding a space in our high schools to make sure that we get a second opportunity for our students to do U-Science, so that it will live in that 7th grade class, and then we'll circle back to it in high school to make sure that we're arming our students with the data that they need to make decisions. And with that said, I will pass to Mr. Andres.
Thanks, Lori. A strong academic foundation and a positive student experience go hand in hand. And we want all Dublin students to have a well-rounded education and have access to resources so they can be physically and mentally healthy and balanced. As you'll see on the next slide, We've been steadily working to meet the goal of having nearly all graduates earn at least one local seal, and a seal that shows a student has had opportunities for participation and contribution around the schools. So as of today, 62% of our seniors have earned the Student Engagement Seal, 33% have earned the Fine and Performing Arts Seal, but only 3% have still reported enough hours to get the Community Service Seal. So that last bullet on the left-hand side, that is where the work is. But what we're finding is we've got a lot of students who have earned the hours, but they've also earned other seals, and they don't need the Community Service Seal, so they're not entering their time. So when our committee gets back together, we're going to have a conversation about whether this is the right goal to measure or if it's something else that we want to take a look at in the future. In terms of wellness, the Panorama Survey window is between March 6th through the 17th, and so data for the spring will be available after spring break. That physical and mental wellness goal happens slow, small, and daily, where our teachers get to know our kids, our families, and help facilitate meaningful relationships at school. This Friday is our final full professional development day, where our teachers will have an opportunity to listen, learn, and collaborate around the topic of resilience. More specifically, we want to implement best practices from resilience research. And this research tells us that success for all students is increased when educational environments model and provide caring relationships, high expectations, and, back to that well-rounded part, opportunities for participation and contribution to school. So that PD will perfectly align to the well-rounded and physical mental wellness goals in Journey 2030. And with that, back to Dr. Schwanke with Partnerships and Networking.
Okay, Partnerships and Networking is a collaborative goal between human resources, and I'll be sharing Mr. Boney's portion this evening, and our communications department, which I will toss to Cassie. So just to discuss very quickly the staff development and recruitment goal, we really wanted to look at how we're enhancing our staff development and how we're retaining our current teachers and their level of satisfaction and engagement. So if you flip to the next slide, you'll see we have 3 really tangible processes in place that are going quite well. The passport process is a way that we are interviewing and placing our teachers. This is out of the typical norm for how you interview teachers, and I think it's fantastic. We are pulling teachers together as a group and really getting to know how they interview with others in the room, with the principal in the room, other leaders from our central office team. The DTA, our Dublin Teachers Academy, and our Grow Your Own process is also going quite well. DTA currently has 40 students in it, 15 in year 1 and 25 in year 2. And through DTA, they work on interviewing skills, and we're going to make sure that they have a contact for future recruitment. The Grow Your Own, we're looking to focus on current paraprofessionals who might want to have a pathway to be an intervention specialist in our district. We're also doing selective recruitment based upon our responsible staffing goal. So we're looking really hard at any positions that do come open through attrition or retirement or resignation, and whether we need to fill that position and if there might be somebody else within our district who would like that position. Now I flip it over to Cassie.
Good evening. For family and community partnerships, we have been working really hard on trying to make sure our messaging all links back to one place so that people have what we're kind of calling a source of truth for things that are happening in the district. So we, with our new website, have started DCS Today, which is a newsroom, if you will, digital newsroom on our website, where we post almost everything that we put out. So if someone needs to reference something or wants to look something up, they can do that relatively easy. We've created categories on there. There's a really robust search feature on there, so people can find what they need. We're also working with Dr. Marshausen on an In the Know video series. So we've been posting one 90-second to 2-minute video each week on a topic in our district where Dr. Marshausen gives 3 key things to know about that topic. We put those on social media, and we also post them to DCS Today, so they're there if anybody would like to see them. And We put them on Nextdoor as well, which has been fun to grow our audience there. When I got here, we started United Newsletter. The newsletter has now grown to a magazine that is 20 to 24 pages of really vibrant stories and pictures of the things happening in our district. It is both informative and inspiring, and we had the first issue that went out in the fall, and we're actually sending the spring issue to the printer tomorrow. So we are excited for that to come out. And then recently we did a refresh of our key communicator group. So we looked really strategically at who's on that group and the value that they bring. And they are now working in almost an advisory capacity to my team to help us with strategic messaging. So what we do is we simulate messaging that we anticipate going out district-wide, and we tell them to poke holes in it, ask questions, tell us what words, may not sit well with them, and that's been extremely valuable to my team to have a group of people who all come from all different backgrounds, experiences, all schools across our district, who can advise us on what that messaging looks like and how it might sound. Something that might sound great to us could come across as not so great to some people. So that has been a huge advantage for my team. And I'm going to pass it to Mr. Stark to talk about master facility planning.
To meet the projects that our community passed with the 2023 bond, we have a very, very busy summer ahead of us. You can see there's a lot of projects on there, and they're all happening this summer, which means there'll be about 5 schools that will completely close out to our public, which will be Scioto, Jerome, Davis, Sells, and Riverside. There's been an incredible amount of coordination, communication, collaboration with not only our buildings, but our designers, our contractors, and the different municipalities that we deal with, from Union County, Jerome Township, City of Dublin, to ensure there's a lot of logistics set up to get moving this summer, and to make sure that mobilization and construction takes place and not in conflict with one another. So, for example, at Jerome, Davis, and Scioto and Sells will have multiple projects going on at the same time. So we have all hands on deck to continue these projects.
Okay, and finally, the planning for growth. None of this will be new to our board. We are adding on to Scioto. Thanks to the community support in our last levy, this is definitely the most cost-effective and need-based path forward. High school redistricting will occur a lot on the same timeline that we used for middle school and elementary, just 1 year later. So you can look for some community meetings, a webinar in April, and then some community meetings in early fall. Once again, that process will be led by Matt Cropper, GIS. We will have some community sessions for input, and you can see those dates listed there. So I applaud this team. I applaud the work that you've all done. Thank you all, Jeff, Lori, Chris, Cassie, for staying focused on Journey 2030 and allowing these updates to our board. Any questions for anyone on the team?
I have a couple of questions. First one, Mrs. Dietrich, could you talk about the, I forgot, DCS today, I think it is. Can you talk about that and how it relates to the newsletter and the emails and like where it fits into the communication plan?
Yeah, so we have several different channels that we communicate with our audiences with. So we have e-newsletters that go out to our parents, and high school students receive them as well at the secondary level. And then we have a district e-news that goes out. What DCS Today does is it provides community who aren't by default connected to us the opportunity to find information that they might want. So what we've done is, as opposed to kind of creating a moat around our schools, we've tried to take a lot of the news that we're already sharing internally with people who are connected by default through their students or because they work here, and try to get it up on the website so that anybody has access to it and it's available to the public. What that then does is make it so that it's searchable through Google, so like SEO and search engine optimization. So if someone were to go and try to look something up, they now have access to it. It'll show up in Google and it'll pull, and they can read that. And so what we've done is tried to strategically, and we plan to continue to build, is everything that we're putting out then becomes a web story on our website so that people can circle back and find that information. Because what happens is If I'm a mom and I saw it in a newsletter and I'm out at Kroger and I'm trying to share it with someone who didn't get that newsletter, it becomes very challenging. And so one of the things that the key communicators recommended was taking that content and putting it somewhere where they could say, hey, go to the website. It's on the website. It's on the website. It's on the website. So that's what we're trying to do, is kind of redirect people's attention off of social media into a place where we have the facts about our district.
Thank you. And then my second question is for Mrs. Marple. And I know you mentioned that Kevin Patton was looking for a space for high school students to have another opportunity to learn more about youth science and school links. Can you say a little bit more about like what they are getting in 7th grade around that, and then what the new opportunity for high school students would be, and what are they currently getting?
Yes, and let me remind you that academic planning happens in a few different places. Students can plan in school links, but every student, as they go through scheduling, is doing academic planning and can work out their 4 years of high school in Infinite Campus scheduling as well. What Youth Science does is Youth Science gives them information about their aptitudes. So we are doing that work in the 7th grade, Prepared for Success, for the first time this year. Last year, our 8th graders did that because we knew they were going to miss that 7th grade opportunity, right? So now, one of our goals for this year was to space out an opportunity for students to revisit Youth Science, because students do change quite a bit between, say, the beginning of their 7th grade year and the end of their 9th grade year or beginning of their 10th grade year. So for this year, we've been working with our high school principals, and it looks like we're going to be doing that in the modern world history space this year, but that may not be the permanent landing spot as we continue to have conversations about the best way to access all high school students. In high school, it's a little more complicated because student schedules are more complicated. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I'd like to thank this team. I'd also like to thank our building level administrators, because every year as you approve these annual goals in July and August, our buildings then build their building goals off of our district goals. So when we talk about alignment, you are getting a mid-year update from our team on where we are as a district. At the same time, these folks, as they meet with our building principals, are seeing where our buildings are on similarly aligned goals. And one of the things that we really strive to do is not have a strategic plan that is a binder or on a shelf, or more likely a folder on your desktop, but something that we are able to talk with and about when we look at what's keeping our focus in our school district. So this team is very intentional, and they do amazing work, and just want everybody to know our buildings are doing similar work when it talks about each of those goals at the building level. So thanks to all of these folks and our principals and our teachers as they do data teams and they look at their data. It's all aligned and it's all intentional in how we build a pathway to be always growing and getting better each and every year.
Okay, next up is public participation for action items on the agenda. There is no one signed up this evening, so we will move on to the Board of Education committees.
I have two. The first one that I would like to share, I had the opportunity to attend the New Solutions K-12 meetings on January 24th, February 4th, and February 6th to discuss the findings and recommendations for special education, gifted and talented students, and English learners. During the meetings, Nate Levinson and his team spent over 7 hours, I believe, discussing their findings with teachers, central office and building administrators, ISs, GISs, EL teachers, and others. It was a wonderful opportunity for me as a board member to hear the different perspectives of everyone in the room And I particularly enjoyed our table discussions. We have some really high-level thinkers and just brilliant people in this district, and it was helpful for me to hear what they were excited about, what some of the challenges they saw, and how we might implement some of the suggestions. As you can imagine, there was a lot covered, so I'm not going to go over everything. I'm just going to share some of the highlights and some of the themes that stood out to me in particular as a board member. But first, I want to just share what some of the goals were for the project overall. And the first thing for each area was that just understanding what our current practices are in the district related to special education, gifted services, and EL. And then compare and contrast how our current practices align with best practices, and then identify areas of opportunity. So I do want to highlight some of the commendations. So there were commendations across the board stating that our gifted intervention specialists, our EL staff, and our special education staff are hardworking. They care about their students. That was like the top commendation for each of those areas, so I'm proud of that. Each group also reported feeling supported and respected by leadership, which Nate Levinson said was often rare in districts. So I'm also glad to hear that. He also, I thought this was significant. He said that post-pandemic students with disabilities have been making measurable progress in 3rd and 8th grade ELA and math, significantly more than the rest of the state, and that students have grown more than others across the country as well. The district has taken steps in the right directions for all 3 focus areas. I'll just go over some brief areas of opportunity that were highlighted. So for special education, one thing that stood out to me was scheduling for students and staff that would allow for consistent use of best practices and interventions across all buildings and grade levels, and just allocating specific expertise where it's needed to meet students' specific needs. And for gifted and talented services, some opportunities that stood out to me were just having a clear objective definitions for academically gifted, for talented and inquisitive students, which to me, having those definitions as not an educator, really just having those explained was important to me or impactful for me. And then ensuring that there is a multi-step, transparent, comprehensive, and fair identification process for each student in each one of those areas. And then a couple areas of opportunity to highlight for EL was creating multiple EL plans and improving assessments that assess EL students' skills, including English proficiency and academic proficiency in their native language, and using that to inform placements and plans. And then one thing that was recommended was updating the organizational structure so that it reflects the increasing scale and importance of EL services. And I believe we'll talk more about this, and Mr. Andrus and Mrs. Marple will probably have more to say about that. And my second report as the OSBA legislative delegate, it's that time of year again where OSBA has put out a call for amendments for the legislative platform. As you may recall, if we'd like to make an amendment to the legislative platform, we must pass a resolution and then send that to OSBA by May 31st. And that's it.
I also have 2 committee reports. The first is the STAC meeting with teachers, and what was presented to them was some clarifications on the process that would happen if there was ever a time when immigration came into our schools, and what the process would look like, which I think helped ease the worries and concerns of the teachers in the classroom, and also reiterated that it is law by federal, it is federal law that we do not know the status of our students, and that also eased some of the teachers, and by law they also cannot ask the status of the students. That is a Supreme Court decision. So I think a lot of teachers thought that they would be put in the middle of this, and that really helped them be able to focus on just teaching the students in front of them and not concern themselves with what is going on elsewhere. Other than that, they had some question. They also got a new staffing timeline in regards to when full staffing will occur, and they signed a memorandum of understanding, staffing by March 1st, postings, positions will be open March 10th for intra-district moves, and interviews by March 17th. For all positions internally filled to be by spring break. That way they now have, it's more concise and fits with the district timeline as well. Some questions that they had were basically on the NSK 12 and what that's going to look like, and we still don't know quite yet, as we're still working through the final plan that was given to the district. And then also looking at the high school bell schedule, so that all 3 high schools are on the same bell schedule. And I believe we're going to hear a little bit more about the Columbus Promise from Dr. Marshausen, so I will let him talk about that. Elementary school, they were more concerned about kindergarten and trying to make sure that we have support staff available as we're coming into full day kindergarten next year. We don't know what we don't know. We don't know what kinds of students we're going to have, what their needs are. So just the understanding that there will be space left if we need ISs and extra support staff for those students. And that is it from the STAC meeting. And then also key communicators with Cassie. And she did a great job of talking to our key communicators and helping navigate some misinformation that's been out in the news, so that they can then go and share that. That includes the Cardinal Health building and how that ended, as well as high school redistricting updates, and again, the national policy on immigration enforcement. And then we also had a long discussion about DYA in the schools and how recreation sports fees are now going to change, just like the pools, the Dublin City pools. The fees are going to be different. Instead of getting some discount for being in Dublin schools but living in a different city, that's going away. Because obviously DYA, just like the pools, are paid for by Dublin city residents, not Dublin School District residents. So explaining those taxes, Cassie did a great job, so all the key communicators can go back and talk to their people about that. Again, talked about the Columbus Promise and the rollout for the new health curriculum and how parents can get involved in that process as well. So that is all I have.
Okay, I just have one update, and this is from the Business Advisory Council. It was a joint meeting with the Student Superintendent Advisory Council. So at the beginning of the year, we do this with the students present, and it's a great opportunity for the students who are part of that to experience all of the different area businesses that we partner with for the Business Advisory Council. And at the last meeting, we were at Rodo. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of it, but it's very close to where we are right now. It's in Dublin. I believe it's on Discovery Boulevard or Parkway. But anyway, it's been around since 2004, and it is fascinating. I just was amazed. Basically, the gist of it is they create all those interactive things that you would experience at COSI or at the zoo, where there could be water involved, but it's play-based fun. They make all of those models, and they fabricate them right there in their warehouse, and then they break them all down and they pack them all up and they ship them to wherever they're going. So in terms of servicing our students and being such a good partner, you can literally go to them from any tangent. You can go to them from the manufacturing side. If you're interested in that, you can go from coding, you can go from logistics, mechanical engineering, theater background for set designs. So just a ton of different avenues that our students can take advantage of and get some really good experience. They do offer internships on a 12-week basis, which, again, just fabulous. They offer tours. So I know that when we were having our tour, they talked about also having tours for kids with special needs, with sensory needs, and they walk them through and have them play and rough and tumble on the things that they've built there. So just an awesome day. It was great. Anything else? Did you want to say something?
Well, I want to thank Rodo for hosting, and our Student Advisory Council didn't get an opportunity to tour at the end, so we're moving our next Student Advisory Council meeting back to Rodo because the students wanted to see that tour, and they were gracious enough to host us twice in about 5 weeks. So what a great community partner, and it is like Disneyland when you're in there. So it's a great place to go for meetings.
Yes, I'm looking forward to the next one already. Okay, moving on to the student representative update. AJ.
So across the board, students are looking forward to the upcoming 4-day weekend and Valentine's Day. Thank you, guys. For Kaufman, this past Saturday, they hosted their winter formal with the theme Northern Lights, and Kaufman girls basketball hosted their senior night this past Saturday and got their win against Hilliard-Davidson. Jerome currently is having their Spirit Week. The theme is You Are Loved Week. Sauda Theater's production of Titanic the Musical was recently picked to perform at the State Thespian Conference at Westerville Central in March. The theater also has their performance of Hadestown coming up the weekend of February 21st. The band has a combined concert tonight with the middle school at Davis. Sauda Boys Basketball hosted their senior night recently against Delaware Hayes, and Sauda's Purple Star Club hosted their annual military dinner where veterans from around the community came and enjoyed a meal and a basketball game at Sauda. At Emerald Campus, IB diploma students visited the Ohio History Center to learn more about what they dub the theory of knowledge, which is a core in the diploma program. They also hosted the Cardinal Health IT Hackathon with students from the IP Cybersecurity and IB Computer Science classes. There are also multiple charity events going on at Emerald Campus, including a bake sale raising money for 2 kids, which is sponsored by Holt International to provide them a safe home, a life, and a prom dress, and there's also a Prom Dress Institute clothing drive. For a representative update, we're continuing to garner student feedback about ways to improve student life here at Dublin, especially after a productive meeting today with Mr. Andrus, Mr. Stark, Ms. Dietrich, and Ms. Marple. That's all I have.
I just want to say real quick, congratulations on Titanic.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, AJ. Moving on to reports and action items from the superintendent's office. Dr. Marshausen.
Thank you. A couple things, and it was mentioned already once. I have up here that the Columbus Broken Promise. We have asked for several years as the city of Columbus invests taxpayer dollars in a scholarship program that is titled the Columbus Promise. During the Columbus Promise, students who are eligible receive a full scholarship, fully paid tuition to attend Columbus State Community College. But the problem with the Columbus Promise is it serves less than 50% of the students in the city of Columbus. In the city of Columbus, 50% of their students attend the suburban schools or private schools or charter schools. Yet their parents' tax dollars go to the city of Columbus officials. At a time when we look at our residents who live in the city of Columbus and attend the Dublin City School District, over 5,000 students and their families, those families see the city of Dublin increasing their costs to participate in youth sports, increasing their costs to go to our rec center, which is understandable. They don't pay Dublin city taxes. But at the same time, their own city is abandoning them and taking away opportunities for them to benefit from a scholarship program that should be available to all Columbus residents. There's a meeting now scheduled because of my concerns and concerns of other superintendents, largely in the former win-win areas, with Dr. David Harrison at Columbus State Community College. We have expressed these concerns in the past. We are also expressing these concerns with state legislators and some of the businesses that are also part of the funding stream for the Columbus Promise. Two of the most prevalent contributors to the Columbus Promise on the private side are IGS Energy and the Cardinal Health Foundation, both of which are here in Dublin. We want our parents to know who live in the city of Columbus that they're part of our Dublin school family, and we will continue to advocate for them and the students who attend our schools. Because for some of these students, a free Columbus State Community College education would be life-changing. And their parents are paying tax dollars that should be part of this. So we'll keep you posted as a board, keep our community posted. But this is something that we have asked politely about. We've been told, oh, it might be phase 3 for the suburban students, and I think we're done not bringing this to folks' attention and making this more of an issue as we advocate for our families. Any questions? I do know that Ohio Wesleyan University in Delaware County is working on a similar program, and they have said that all Delaware County residents, whether they go to the Delaware schools or Olentangy schools, we have a number of folks in our community who are Delaware County, Dublin City schools. They're looking to include them in this in their program up in Delaware County. I had a conversation this morning with Dublin's Chief of Police, Chief Pice, and one of our topics was an app that I was unfamiliar with about 12 hours ago, and it's an app called PollChat. And PollChat is an anonymous app that is available on iPhones and I would assume Android devices, where someone can post anonymously a poll question and other people can step in and vote on that question, all done anonymously. There is really no use for this in our school buildings, and the questions that are being asked of our students are grotesque and horrific. And yes, it would be classified as bullying and harassment if there was a way to know who was posing the poll question and who was responding to the poll question. We have inappropriate polls about administrators, about teachers, and most disturbingly, about students in our buildings. My ask of our community is that mom and dad, look and see what apps are on your child's phone. If you pay the bill for the phone, you can check the apps on your child's phone. If your 17 and your 18-year-old says no, it's pretty simple. Disconnect their phone from the service provider, because this is something that we can't do alone. We're working with our local police department. Chief met with and talked to our SROs today. We've talked to our principals and our counselors, and we need our help from our parents, because we can keep the phones away, we can keep them off, but the things that are being done on things like Poll Chat and the Whatever's Next app are not only disruptive to the educational environment, they're disruptive to the mental health of the students who are targeted on those polls. We'll talk about this in our PTO meetings. We'll talk about this in our key communicators. We'll ask our principals to include this in their messages home. But we need to be mindful that that ultimate control of that device falls in the hands of the parents who pay the bill and give the device to their children. You can easily see as a parent, every time your child downloads a new app on the phone, it can pop up on your phone if you set it up that way. You can make it so they can't download apps without your permission. So whatever it is that we have to do as a Dublin community to make sure that we're doing everything together to keep our kids safe, that's something that we continue to work on, and we're going to have to continue to message. So if you see this app on your child's phone, please delete it. It's not something that we're using in any educational setting. And again, it's 100% anonymous, and it's created a lot of hurt and a lot of harm for some of the students in our schools. On an positive update, we had the opportunity last week, thanks to Mr. Stark and the team from Elford, to go through Bishop Elementary. It was one of the coldest days out, but it was warm in the building. We've got windows, we've got floors. They're actually starting to paint some of the sections in the building. Lucas Bauer sent a video to the families who will be the new Bishop families. They have a newsletter. Their Facebook and Instagram are up, and the website's in progress. So as we build a sense of community around Bishop, and for the families that will be part of that new school family, it started. It's here. And as we get ready for Meet the Teacher events in August and kindergarten registration, which is ongoing, Lucas is doing a phenomenal job building that staff and bringing that community together. And we couldn't be more excited for the opening of Bishop Elementary. And I don't know if I'm going to steal some thunder here for Mr. Stark as well, but Bishop is on time to be ready, and it looks like we may even get a little bit ahead of time on our preschool. So we continue to work to make sure that our commitment to our community to have those buildings up and running, and I have every confidence that Mr. Stark delivers on time. So when we start talking about Scioto opening in August of '26 with that addition, the proof's in the past performance, and our partners in our team are ready to go with that.
We have United Magazine is off to the printer, and I just wanted to note with the big game that was last night in the Super Bowl, the cover story for this issue will be Dylan Bradshaw and his friend Nate Norrell, I think, who collaborated together to win the Doritos Crash the Super Bowl contest and had their commercial aired during the first quarter. So it's big, exciting alumni news in our department. We'll also feature the amazing work that Mrs. Marple's team and Mr. Patton and Ms. Hinder are doing with Pathways and the Scheduling for Success Night and Mr. Patton's podcast. We have some really fantastic stories from Washington, D.C., including a beautiful letter that some of our 8th grade students received from a veteran that they met while they were in Washington, D.C., and he wrote a very kind letter to the school about how wonderful the students were and polite and well-behaved, and that they made his day. And then a couple stories about some Jerome seniors who credit their experience in theater and drama to helping them overcome some really challenging life situations. And then some great DCS Gives Back stories about work that our students are doing at Bailey for the Ronald McDonald House and Riverside with Friendship Village, and going over and visiting some of the senior citizens there. So I think it's going to be a really powerful issue, and it's all about better together.
And Cassie and her team do such a great job, because when we talk about how we communicate, especially with folks who don't have children in our schools, United gives us that opportunity to recap and share stories that they may not be at our website or getting any newsletters, and it's 70 and getting e-news, and it's 70% of our community. And for those of us who are old, who remember the Villager showing up once a week at our driveway and getting news through the Dublin Villager about the schools, that means of communication's no longer there. So when you look at how do you communicate with folks who don't have young people in our schools, Cassie and her team have gone with the Quarterly United, and yeah, some of the stuff we've heard, if you're us, but for 70% of our families, that's how they get information. And I can tell you, and I think Mrs. De Silva probably knows, when we have our senior citizens meeting, sometimes they come in for the meatloaf, but carrying United. And they come in with questions from the newsletter that still comes to the mailbox. So it's a great way for us to be able to share our message and keep folks informed about the good and challenging things that are happening in our district, who may not be connected all the time. So thanks to Cassie and her team for all the work that goes into producing United.
Thank you. Next up is report and action items from the Treasurer's Office. Mr. Kern.
Yeah, just a few items on here. Now I want to go over the appropriation change you've seen in the past where, like, for example, the last meeting where we did a reallocation of the grant funds and the 500 funds. But if you may or may not remember, when we do our year end and then for the next year approvals of appropriations at the last meeting in June, we do appropriate it at a lower, more detailed level when it comes to the general fund. So the 900 object is other things like transfers and advances out, and their appropriations. So the appropriation, we're asking for an increase is to make sure we stay our expenditures within appropriations in that fund, since we budget there. Mostly that was due to transfers that were a little higher than estimated. Most likely it was due to the summer school fund, which is accounted for in a different fund to help subsidize the summer school programming that we have there. Donations, we have 2 donations, and pretty self-explanatory there. We have Dublin Coffin Baseball Club for purchase of coaches apparel, but also the Blackball Giving Fund on behalf of PPG Industries Foundation to Eversole Run for STEM-related student projects of $3,000. So we're always very appreciative of those gifts. And that's all I have this evening.
It is recommended by the Treasurer that the Board of Education approve items 7A through 7B.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Valentine.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Gillis. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Messig?
Yes.
And Mrs. Rigby?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Department of Academics and Student Learning. Dr. Schwanke.
Tonight is the night that Lori will revisit our K-5 English Language Arts resource approval and, more importantly, perhaps, the professional learning plan that your team has put together. So take it away, Lori.
Good evening. As you know, tonight we have the K-5 ELA core resource for your approval and second read. Gina Seaman is here tonight if the board does have any questions regarding that approval. Gina has been working hard on a plan for our teachers, because after a resource approval comes purchasing, and then after that, support for our teachers prior to fall for implementation. So she's still working through some of the details, but based on some questions last time, I just wanted to give a high level of what is currently in the works for that plan. So as of now, there'll be some administration-specific training in either late spring or early summer, with teachers receiving onboarding training directly from Savas, and having some grade level support, and having some options for that at the beginning of the summer or at the end of the summer, which is a good time to catch some of our new hires as they prepare for a new school year. In the fall and winter next year, we know that implementation of a new ELA core resource at elementary requires a lot of intentionality from our teaching staff. And so we're talking about ways right now that we can make sure we're thinking about what embedded coaching looks like for our teachers. And then next week, Gina will be talking with our elementary principals to start planning some opportunities for some touch points for some mid-implementation sessions, and potentially opportunities for Savas to come back out and work in our buildings and make sure that teachers feel that support and ongoing learning as they add new layers into their instruction with our students. Are there any questions?
If they're doing training in the summer, is this going to be required of the teachers? Will they get a swap day for this, or how is that going to work?
Great question. In our DEA contract, there is something regarding curriculum implementation. Our teachers, it is optional. Summer work is optional for our teachers always, but we do pay them for that time when they come in the summer.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Okay, then. It is recommended by the superintendent that the Board of Education approve item 9A, which is the approval of the K through 5 English Language Arts resource. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Messick. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Rigby?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Reports from the Department of Operations. Mr. Stark.
Good evening. We only have a couple items for your consideration tonight. The first one is a couple of easements for Scottish Corners. This is, I put it in the board report a couple weeks ago. This is actually a great improvement for Scottish Corners. It's going to create a what they call a hawk lighting system, which is kind of a quasi-traffic light. When you press it, it puts all these stoplights out for people to walk across. Right now we have crossing guards and not full sidewalks. This will give us full sidewalks, no crossing guards needed. It's a really upgrade for the area. It's all being done by a grant from the state, and the city's picking up the rest of the costs. The only action by the board will be this permanent and temporary easement, and the donation piece just means we're not charging for the permanent easement, which is usually done, but because they're spending on all this, and to be quite honest, the area that we're giving the permanent easement to is really negligible as far as development land for the schools, and there's also a huge storm drain underneath there that they would have to take care of. So put a bow on that, I guess I would say. And then the last thing is we're doing 2 fire alarms this year. We already bid out Sell's fire alarm. This is for Jerome, and the lowest responsible bid was Area Energy and Electric, and for about $493,000. And we're also asking for a contingency of an additional $123,000 for unknowns. If the board approves this, this will not only be a summer project, but we'll be working just like we're doing at Sell's right now with as many projects as you saw on that list, where we can, where it has no interruption to staff or students. We're starting in the school year. So for example, at Sells, at nighttime, we are starting to lay conduit and throughout the ceiling so they have a running start for the fire alarm, and we're going to be doing the same at Jerome. So with the board's approval tonight, that will start that process. Any questions?
Okay, it is recommended by the superintendent that the board approve items 11A and 11B. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Valentine. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
And Mrs. Rigby?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Reports from Human Resources.
Okay, that'll be me stepping in for Mr. Boney tonight. I'll do a quick summary of the highlights of the items on the agenda tonight, but I do want to draw your attention to tonight's agenda where you will see a new administrative job description for a director of EL. This is directly tied to what Mrs. De Silva spoke about with NSK 12's summary of changes for our EL department. So this is a new role, and it does fit within our responsible staffing plan. We're looking to focus our resources where we can have the greatest need. And at this point, I am going to ask Mr. Andres, who has been overseeing EL, to talk to us a little bit about how we've had to adjust and adapt just this year with our increasing EL enrollment and how adding an administrative position will help us be more efficient. Mr. Andres?
Yes. Thanks, Mrs. De Silva, for the great overview of the commendations. There were a lot of them, but the NSK 12 report and what they presented, it gave us an outline of a new path forward, and really I should say new paths forward, because we need to create multiple plans to be able to support our ELs that reflect both proficiency levels of the student, but also our school composition, because let's face it, our buildings are very different. Erica Stone, our EL coordinator, has done a wonderful job leading the program and has increasingly relied on our teacher leaders to assume some administrative tasks. This year, our population of English learners has grown so much that we currently have 4 long-term substitutes in our building just to keep up with the growth and maintain our ratios from the fall. So past practice would have been to increase our EL teacher team by about 4 next year to account for the increase with our students and the additional administrative responsibilities that go along with that high volume of students. The NSK 12 plan challenges us to rethink the way that we've done things, our past practice. So instead of hiring those 4 new additional teachers, what we would do is shift our resources to focus on the future. And we'll do this by adding additional administrators who can lead that structural change in how we provide the service, how we manage our data, how we allocate our staff, provide differentiated supports to particular buildings, and adhere to ever-changing mandates by the Department of Ed. So this will allow our amazing teachers to do more of what they do best, and that is teach and do less of the administrative responsibilities that we have asked them to do as we've grown over time. So by bringing in expanded EL leadership to transform our program, we'll be able to do what we asked NSK 12 to do to begin with, and that is help us improve outcomes for English learners while making the work of teachers more sustainable, all in a cost-effective manner.
And just one more note about that. Mr. Levinson was very helpful to us because he pointed out that many districts have served EL students in 2 ways. One is emerging speakers, and then everybody else. And we know that our EL students all have very complex, unique language journeys, and so I think we all are excited and intrigued and a little nervous, but that's never stopped us going forward, and we're looking forward to what this will look like. So I do want to pause in case there's questions from the board about this new job description.
Any other Central Ohio districts have this position, and anything to elaborate on?
Yeah, I think, well, that's a great question. Again, there's not a standard model for EL instruction or EL service because every district is so different. And we have so many different languages here, and we have students who have a very strong core base in their own native language, and we have students who don't, and that instruction needs to look differently. So Chris, to answer your question, I don't think a comparison, an apples to apples comparison exists. I also think Dublin has an opportunity here to do it right as opposed to just try to get through. So nobody that looks like us, to my knowledge, has this. I believe Nate told us it's not very common, and certainly not common in Ohio, to look carefully at EL instruction and try and do it well. Again, it tends to be the kind of thing where if you just hang on long enough, they'll be okay, and we'd like to do better than that.
As we approve the job description, is there, obviously this gets into the process, but internal, I mean, obviously we've got a great deal of folks, but as well as whatever we be doing from the recruitment side externally?
I think both, Mr. Valentine. We will have internal interest, I assume, but we're going to cast a very wide net on this. We're going to post this position in some national platforms. That isn't to say we're looking for someone to come from a very long way to work for us, but we just want to make sure that we really look far and wide to get expertise. We're not even pigeonholing ourselves by saying it has to be an EL person. We need a good system, we need a good framework, and we really want to do this in a world-class way. So we're casting the net wide. We might hire locally. We just don't know what that's going to look like.
In working with Nate Levinson, is there a blueprint that he's familiar with in terms of where he's been successful in the past? And is it similar to what we would be looking at, similar changes?
Great question. He was the first to say this isn't done well anywhere. Nate is a straight shooter. And he recommended that we get expertise on leadership, on systems, so that we aren't wasting any of our talent. So like Mr. Andres said, we want our teachers teaching. That's where we want them. We want them with students because they're trained to teach them. We don't, we need to, now this is just me speaking, not Mr. Levinson, we need to make sure that we're using the right databases, that we're looking at the right data, that we're not replicating work. And so I think that speaks to a need for more efficiency and to know our students better. So again, I think we can be trailblazers here. I think we can look at it differently because we are, I think, a model of so many different languages and so many different backgrounds. Not many districts have the diversity within our diversity that we have. Anything you would add, Mr. Andres?
The biggest, for me, what's going to be very challenging in a district like ours is be willing to accept and appreciate that our buildings are different and serve the kids in those buildings differently to meet their unique individual needs. And as Dr. Schwanke said, we've tried very hard to have a service delivery model that is equitable across our buildings, but maybe not tailored to specific kids. And that's what this will allow us to do. And it seems really easy to say out loud, but if you were sitting in that room, you're all of a sudden thinking about how extremely complicated it is. And that's why finding the right person for this role will help us do it right the way that Mr. Levinson said that we should.
And one more note on that. Mr. Levinson was careful to point out, and I think everyone in the room agreed, our EL staff, from Erica Stone, our coordinator, to our teachers, to our bilingual aides, they're working so hard. To the point where I don't know how we could sustain what we're doing unless, as Mr. Andres said, we just keep adding more teachers. And we know with our responsible staffing plan, that's not a financially responsible thing to do. So I do want to make sure I'm very clear that our staff is working so hard and they're so student focused. So none of this is any indication that there's any failure to do great work. But we're growing, and we want to be smarter about that growth.
One thing that I think might be helpful. And I don't know if any of you could be able to explain this the way that Mr. Levinson did, but he had examples of the 8 different buildings and just how complex it is in our district, because we have just like you said, diversity within our diversity. Like we have every different scenario in our district that you could possibly think of in our single district. So it does require thinking outside of the box and
Right.
you know.
And I think that's true, Tiffany. If you lined up our 25 principals and you said, tell me about your EL population, you'd get 25 very different answers. And what we need to do is make sure that our families feel supported, our students, regardless of their native language literacy and their current English language literacy, that they have what they need. I think as this unfolds, as Lori and Chris continue to work on this, and I'm saying that as well because one of Mr. Levinson's recommendations is that we kind of move EL instruction under the teaching and learning umbrella, which would be more in Lori's department, but we're going to do that slowly. Lori and Chris are going to work very closely together. They did to develop this job description. They're going to work closely together when we kind of forge this new path. So I look forward in 6 months' time or a year's time of giving you an update on what EL instruction looks like in Dublin, and I think it will make you all very proud.
Great, thank you. Are you going to cover the other?
Yes, that's not the end of the HR report, my friends. Okay, we also have 4 certified resignations along with 2 retirements. Stacy Holliday will retire from first grade at Indian Run Elementary with 33 years in our district. Elizabeth Rindeau will retire from Depp Elementary with 18 years in Dublin City Schools. We do have 1 hire on tonight, Nicholas McVeigh, who will also be the Dublin Kaufman football coach next year. There is 1 6-period pay request, which was initially missed earlier this year, but does need approval. The next several items on the agenda are related to summer work for our staff, and these items are listed for the are needed for the successful operation of summer school or work in general that will help us get ready for school in August. We have a couple leaves of absences for next year requiring your approval, and the supplementals on tonight's agenda are for spring and fall of 25 athletics. If you shift over to the classified agenda, there's 1 retirement on tonight along with 4 resignations. Lynn Martin is our retirement with a paraprofessional at Wright Elementary with 12 years in the district. We have 4 new hires, 2 unpaid leave of absences, and like in the certified agenda, there is language and recommendations for classified staff to work over the summer. You'll see 1 single stipend in our section tonight. It's a revision to a previously board-approved item from August. This is the Peer Connections Program, and you'll just see that 1 person is removed and another is added. There's no change to the total financial amount. Any questions? Okay.
Thank you. It is recommended by the superintendent that the board approve items 13A through 13C. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. De Silva, second by Mrs. Messick. Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. De Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Messick?
Yes.
Mrs. Gillis?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
And Mrs. Rigby?
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. Items for board discussion or future agenda items? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Valentine, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. De Silva. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?